here's your host, Alex Garrett.
All right, back here on the Sports Hour and with Alex Garrett on Alex Garrett Podcasting and Can You Dig Sports. Someone I really dig. He's like a family member at this point. Lou Terminello. You're more than just a friend. You've got career in sports, and I've been wanting to get you on this podcast for so many years. Here we are. Thanks for joining, Lou.
Hey, it's a pleasure to join you. You are like family, and it's a pleasure that you have me on. Looking forward to the next segment here.
And we talk about sports all the time, but I want to focus on your career in sports because a lot of people listening to this probably want to know how to break into the business. And I feel like, Lou, you're the guy to turn to with this because you've been in the business. You've been a senior VP with the New Jersey Nets Sports and Entertainment. Yes, the New Jersey Nets. Let's start there. And a senior VP, talk about your experience in the sports business with the Nets firstly.
Well, Alex, when I was in 7th grade and 12 years old, I told my 7th grade nun that I want to work in the sports business. I knew at an early age I couldn't hit a curveball, couldn't hit a jump shot, but I love sports so much I wanted to get into business. So when I graduated from college, I was a history major and a journalism minor, and my goal was to get into sports. Now, in those days, back in right around 1980, you didn't have the opportunities to work for a sports organization like there is today. ESPN was just coming into play. The NBA had 23 teams. Now they have 30. Staffs were small. Team staffs were small. They were about 20, 25 people. The NBA office, which now has thousands of people, the league office, at that time had about 50, 45 to 50. So to break into the business was a challenge. You had to get lucky. You had to know somebody. Well, I didn't know anybody. So I just kept digging, kept calling, and I wrote everywhere. I applied everywhere in the country. And I was lucky enough. I'm a Jersey guy, and I was lucky enough on my third try to get a sales job with the New Jersey Nets. And it was no guarantee that was going to become my career because the only thing they had was a 3-month full-time job, full-time part-time job in 1981. Make a long story short, they liked my work. After 3 months, they hired me full-time, and I was there for 28 years. And started at the bottom, selling tickets, worked my way up, did stuff outside of my job description. You always have to do duties outside of your job description and pay your dues. And it was a rewarding 28-year career with the Nets.
Well, 28 years, Lou, yeah. No stories, right? Absolutely complete dullness working for the New Jersey Nets, I'm sure.
No, there was some interesting stories and some exciting times. But before we get to some of the stories,
sure.
Getting back to anybody who's listening who wants to break into the industry, just don't worry about how much that you're going to get paid if you get an opportunity in sports. You're not going to get rich right away. The most important thing is getting your foot in the door, working hard, showing versatility, and you will have a career. Being versatile, showing versatile skills is important. It really is. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was able to build my career because even though I was in sales, I knew a lot about media, and I developed a knack for media. I helped in public relations. I helped in event operations. So the more you know, the better it is. It's better it is for any young people who looking to get into the business.
Well, now that you're on versatility, let's pause the stories thing for a minute because I also feel that sports in general, like the athletes, they're being told to do one sport, and isn't that damaging sports as well? Like, why can't these kids be versatile nowadays?
Well, you're right. You make a very good point at the high school and pre-high school level. Kids who used to play baseball in the springtime and play basketball or hockey in the wintertime now are just playing one sport because the sports have become a year-round challenge for them, a year-round development for them. I mean, I know I have friends whose kids played 2 sports and they dropped to one because, A, to concentrate on one, and to B, the schedules were clashing with each other, so they were afraid that they weren't going to get to their full potential on a sport because they were splitting themselves too thin. The baseball season's overriding the hockey season or the basketball season. So that's why you see, and you're right, it is hurting the kid. It really is hurting the kid. A lot of these athletic kids are missing opportunities because they're just concentrating on one sport. And hopefully the ones that they concentrate on, the sport that they concentrate on, is the one that they will be the best at. But you very seldom see the kids playing 2 or 3 sports like when I was young.
You know, you talk about versatility, Lou. I've got to ask you this because you've probably seen resume after resume, and the kids, as the generations kept going into the 2000s, did you see less of Lou and more of sort of this "I deserve to be here" kind of mentality when applying to be with the Nets?
Alex, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I did see that. There was a lot of people in the early 2000s. When you see resumes, people did not want to pay their dues. They did not want to do certain jobs. After 4 or 5 months, they wanted to become directors or vice presidents. They didn't want to take the normal path to promotion, and you can't do that. Not in sports. You really can't do it in sports. And you can't do it in work. You got to pay your dues, and you got to work hard. And there's a lot of dirty jobs. I remember one time. I'll give you a story. One time we were playing the Detroit Pistons. This was in '83 or '84, and there was a major snowstorm in New Jersey and the whole eastern seaboard. And the truck carrying our 10,000 or 15, it was either 10 or 15,000 promotional items, and couldn't get through the snow. Couldn't get through the snow. So we had to give out vouchers to a sellout crowd, and the Meadowlands where we played in is called the Meadowlands Arena, then the Continental Airlines Arena, then the Izod Center. Held 20,000 people. We had to give out vouchers to the people who came in because the truck didn't get there until the second quarter. Okay, now I have game night duties, but none of us had this game night duty, but we had to all pitch in. We had to help unload the truck with the promotion items, get them to the gates, so when people were leaving, they get their promotional item. So it's not all that, wow, I'm working for a sports team and I'm going to see Michael Jordan tonight or LeBron James or Kevin Durant. It's real work, and you work long hours. And
game day operations is so incredible. I mean, people don't understand that.
They do not understand it. People think that you come in, the lights go on, and it starts. I mean, the game operations people are working all the time. Once one game's over, they're working on the next game. They're working 5-6 games ahead, getting the halftime acts available, getting the national anthem singer, changing videos, changing music. And the thing is, everybody's an expert. You're not going to please 100% of the people. Who doesn't like certain music? Who doesn't like certain videos? Who doesn't like certain on-court games? A half-court shot. Things of that nature.
Now, Lou, does that change in the playoffs? Because obviously you don't know if there's going to be a game tomorrow or not.
In the playoffs, it changes for the finals. I don't know if it's been moved up to the conference finals, but when I was with the Nets and we got to the finals 2 years in a row in 2001 and 2002, back-to-back finals, we took care of game operations, the halftime acts, the on-court contests, but in the finals, the NBA takes over. You have some input, but the NBA takes over. It's the NBA. The NBA runs the finals. There's expanded media, which shrinks the capacity to sell tickets. So the league is in charge. The league is in charge because there's national TV, there's international TV, there's national radio. So it's when you get to the finals, and that's a good problem to have.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to say, for those listening, if you remember, Lou said he was there for 28 years, and in that span, that includes the Kidd, Jefferson, Kittles, Carter era, and of course that led to the finals. And I know, Lou, you're still to this day so ticked they lost to the Lakers. Why are you so ticked they lost? You keep saying you think they could have won it.
Really, I'm more ticked that we lost to the Spurs. I'll give you a little background. Now, when we won in 2002, the 2001-2002 season, when we beat the Celtics in 6 games to win the Eastern Conference Championship, that night the Sacramento Kings were playing Game 6 against the Lakers. Now, the Kings and the Lakers had been battling for a while. The Kings had been a woebegone franchise, just like the Nets were, and they came up and they became a title contender with Webber and Bibby and people like that. They were very good. They were a very good team. They had lost to the Lakers a couple of times in the playoffs previously. This was their year to beat the Lakers, and they lost that night. They won that night, and then they lost Game 7 2 nights later when they were the best free throw shooting team in the league, and they missed 14 or 15 free throws. Lost Game 7 in overtime. Now that night, when the Lakers beat the Kings, I knew we couldn't handle Shaq, and that's why it was so important in my estimation, that we needed the Kings to win that night, because I don't think that the Sacramento Kings would have beaten us in the NBA final. They would have been, so happy that they finally beat the Lakers, and number 2, we were so fast offensively. I don't think their defense would have been able to hold us down. Jason Kidd, Kittles, Jefferson, Kenyon Martin. Nobody ran a break like Kidd. And we got easy baskets after easy baskets. I think we would have beaten the Kings. But again, once they lost, we had no answer for Shaq. I mean, we had Todd McCullough as one of our centers, Aaron Williams, a very good center, but they're all undersized, and Jason Collins. Jason Collins did the best job against Shaq, but he gets into foul trouble because Shaq is unguardable. He's just that dominant a player. So we lost. We lost 4 straight, like I thought we were going to. So the next year, we get to the finals again. We win 10 games in a row in the Eastern Conference Finals. 10 playoff games in a row, which is pretty impressive. We had 10 days off, and then we played the Spurs in Game 1, and we lost. We were stale. We lost Game 1. We won Game 2. We lost Game 3 at home. Won Game 4 at home. And unfortunately lost Game 5 at home, even though we got off to a very good start in Game 5. And they hit a couple of jump shots, the Spurs did. Steve Kerr, who has a lot of rings, both as a coach and a player, hit some shots to create separation. So we go back to San Antonio down 3-2. And we're winning by 14, 15 points most of the second and third quarter. Still up by 6 at the end of 3. And then in the fourth quarter, we fell apart. And we were outscored 31-14 in the fourth quarter. And we lost that game 83-77, I believe it was. It was a 6 or 7 point game. And we lost. That was the Spur loss was a bitter pill to swallow because we had opportunities to win that. That was disappointing. Next year, we lost the Eastern Conference semifinals. Kidd was on one leg, heroic. He had a major knee injury, but you can't keep Jason Kidd down. There was no time management for Jason Kidd. The guy always played and is one of the greatest competitors that I witnessed on a night-to-night basis. He was that good. He would do anything to win. Doesn't matter.
It's kind of a crazy way how his career and life sort of spiraled, right? I mean, it's just like such a hero, and now all of this happens to him. It's like, he could have probably had his number retired and whatnot, but it was not a pretty divorce with the Nets, was it?
Well, his number is retired by the Nets. Number 5 is retired by the Nets. And, he's the greatest player until they got Durant, who is the greatest, in my estimation, the greatest player at the NBA level. Dr. J was also a Net, but he never played with them in the NBA. He only played with them in the ABA. But Jason Kidd made everybody better. That's the bottom line. When he got on the court, he made everybody better. He'll always have a soft spot in my heart. And I think he's going to do a very good job as coach in Dallas. He did a very good job with the Nets in the 1 year as coach, and he wanted a little more power. And they wouldn't give it to him. And I could tell you one thing, and I won't go into detail, but some of the changes that he wanted to make at the end of that first year in the organization on the basketball operations side eventually came true. The things that he wanted, he wouldn't get, and that's why he went to Milwaukee. What he said and what he wanted eventually happened to the Nets. But now the Nets, with Sean Marks, who I think is a brilliant general manager, and they have as good a player in the last 10, 15 years. The skill of Durant is unmatched. I mean, he can shoot. He could shoot off the dribble. He came off his Achilles injury, and he can still explode to the hoop. The Nets would have won the NBA championship last year if Kyrie didn't turn his ankle against the Greek Freak, and if Harden hadn't had the hamstring muscle pull late in the season. But even if Harden didn't come back 100%, if Kyrie didn't have that horrific ankle sprain, the Nets would have won the championship. Phoenix would have been no match for them.
And how about that? Wouldn't Nash versus former team? That would have been kind of fun.
Right. You had Nash versus his former team, and the Nets would have. I think the Nets would have swept them.
Well, Lou,
if they played.
And I want to ask about that because as a Net fan now, knowing that you've experienced that taste of going to the finals, doesn't it frustrate you when they don't get to the finals every year? Or how's that feel watching this team year in, year out now, having been on the other side?
Now this group has been together, really only 1 year. Again, you don't know what's going to happen next year. You can never count injuries. You don't know when injuries are going to happen. Like I said, if Kyrie didn't get hurt, Milwaukee, they were up 2-1. Milwaukee wasn't going to win that series. Sure. Go back a couple of years when Toronto won the championship, and Kawhi Leonard was fantastic for Toronto, but Klay Thompson got hurt and missed the whole series. Durant only came back for Game 5. He had gotten hurt earlier, came back for Game 5, and then blew out his Achilles. If Durant was healthy and if Thompson didn't get hurt, Toronto wasn't beating Golden State. They just weren't.
No, they weren't.
You got to get lucky you got to get lucky at times with injuries, and nobody could. Everybody likes to have a crystal ball. All things being equal, the Nets should be the best team in the East, and probably should be playing the Lakers next year in June. But who knows?
Lou, I gotta say, watching two guys exit the arena on crutches back-to-back nights, Thompson, Durant. That was just weird. I've never seen that in an NBA final at all. Like that magnitude.
Yeah, no, that is. I mean, Klay Thompson is a great NBA player. And then last year in training camp, he suffered another season-ending injury. So you don't know. You don't know.
And the Golden State Warriors, one of the teams that has been the downfall of the, almost the century at the moment because they were at the top. Now they just can't get it together. They're not healthy. But that's another story for another day. Some might be wondering, Lou, maybe me as well, did they carry you over from from New Jersey to Brooklyn? Were you part of that transition, or when did you retire? Like, give us a timeline here.
Well, when I left the Nets in 2008, at the end, right around in December of 2008, I had been working on Brooklyn for about 2 years. The team was still in New Jersey. The team didn't get to Brooklyn until, the 12-13 season. Originally, it was supposed to get to Brooklyn like in 2007 and 2008, but it got delayed and delayed and delayed. Eminent domain issues, people fighting back. They didn't want the arena there, but they worked that out. And for a while, it didn't look like Brooklyn was going to happen, but it did. It's the best thing that ever happened to the franchise. And so I had meetings in Brooklyn. We had an office in Brooklyn right across the way from Barclays. But I was not with the team when they moved to Brooklyn. They moved to Brooklyn about 3.5 years after I left.
Well, I know
I was there for their entire Meadowlands, just about their entire Meadowlands history.
And I got to ask you, so you were there in 81, 82. The Devils are formed. Were you invited to be part of that organization as well? Because was there a tandem there at one point?
There was not. Ironically, eventually there was a tandem for 3 years. If you're but in 1982, which was my second year with the Nets, it was the first year the Devils came into the Meadowlands. They moved from Denver, Colorado. They originally were the Kansas City Scouts. In 74, 75, they came in with the Washington Capitals as an expansion teams in the NHL. They only were in Kansas City for 2 years, then went to Denver, and I think for 6. And they were sold to John McMullen, a New Jersey businessman. And he brought the team to New Jersey, and the team floundered. I mean, the team just wasn't good. It was still – remember, expansion teams in those days, it took time to get better. Not like we see expansion teams now that have free agents and just other avenues. There was no Las Vegas Golden Knights situations back 40 years ago.
That was unbelievable. Their first year, they make it to the final. I mean, where would that come from, right?
Well, that came from because free agency. They were able to get players through free agency. But getting back to the Devils started in 82, 83, and they really were a terrible team until Lou Lamoriello got there in 86, 87. They made the playoffs in 88. They got to the conference finals in 88. And, Lou just built a team where they won 3 Stanley Cups. They got to the finals 5 times. And for 3 years, when the original net owners that I was a part of, when I joined, the 7 owners who own the Nets, they sold to Ray Chambers and a group that ended up being called the Yankee Nets.
Yes, sir.
And even Mr. Steinbrenner owned a piece of the Nets at that time.
And as you know, I got to know Louis Katz up at the stadium, and
and Louis Katz, who was really the guy that I knew, along with Ray Chambers, in that Yankee Nets scenario. So that was a 3-year thing where Lou Lamoriello was the president and CEO of the Nets and the Devils. He was my boss for 3 years, and he ran the Nets just like he ran the Devils. No messing around, tight ship, and we got to the finals twice. Rod Thorne was the president of basketball operations for the Nets, and he did a fantastic job. Getting kid for Stephon Marbury was a gold strike for him. We got Jason in June of 2001. Now, we were trying to get Jason Kidd even at the All-Star break that year, right at the trade deadline, right up to the trade deadline in February of 2001. We were trying to get Kidd even to start at the end of that season, but didn't work out, and we got Jason at during the off season, and Jason Kidd turned the franchise around. I mean, one guy in sports you see many times can turn a franchise around. He did. He changed the history of the Nets, and up until that time, in my first 21 years with the Nets, we won 1 playoff series. One. In the next 6 years with Jason Kidd running the show, we won 10 playoff series. Wow. 10 playoff series we won.
And I should have known they retired his number. Thank you for that correction, by the way, Lou. It's Lou Terminello joining me here. Now, people don't know, but we know each other through the radio world. We were colleagues at Salem Media in New York City. How did you go from the Nets to Salem Radio, and where does radio come into this? Because you were very involved with that.
Well, when I was with the Nets, I also worked in the broadcasting department, and radio was always something that was near and dear to my heart. And back in 1996, we were looking for a new radio home, and one of the stations that we targeted was WOR Radio. And the person I had to deal with was Jerry Crowley, who is a radio legend in the New York metropolitan area from the executive level. And we hammered out a deal, Jerry and myself, to be on WOR. They carried Nets basketball. They carried Nets basketball for 8 years, right through the 2003-2004 season. And Jerry and I stayed friends, and even after we moved to WFAN in 2004, 2005, and the Nets are still on WFAN today.
Now, was Chris Carino calling it back then, too, or who was calling it back in the day?
Okay, when Bob Papa, who was the Giants play-by-play announcer, and he used to be Seton Hall basketball announcer, became our play-by-play announcer, and Chris Carino, who became got the full-time job the first year the Nets went to the finals in 2001, 2002, did about 20 games per year when Bob had assignments that involved the Giants. And but when Mr. Lamorello took over, he didn't like the fact that we didn't have one guy doing all the games. So Bob had to make a decision, and Bob was doing some stuff on network TV that was interfering with some of his Nets games. So Chris Carino became the full-time play-by-play guy, and he's a fantastic announcer. He when you're listening to Chris Carino on the radio, along with Tim Capstraw doing the color, there isn't a better play-by-play color combination in New York broadcast radio. They're tremendous.
And look at the parallel, just for a second on Yes. You got Ian Eagle and Kellen Tripucka still, I believe. I mean, what a team there, too. So TV and radio stacked for the Nets broadcast teams.
Well, right. Well, right now you got Ian and you got Sarah Kustek. She does a great job. Now Kelly Tripucka did radio for the Nets, and he did some TV back in those right around 2001, 2002, 2003, and did a good job. But getting back to how I got involved in the radio business, Jerry was, like I said, Jerry Crowley. I knew Jerry, and when I left the Nets, soon I worked at the New Jersey Sports and Exhibition Authority for a couple of years, which held the contract for the arena, for Giant Stadium, Monmouth Park, the Meadowlands Racetrack. So I worked there for 2 years, and but the NGSCA didn't have the cachet it did in the 90s. The Nets, Devils, and Seton Hall all moved out. The Nets to Brooklyn, the Devils and Seton Hall to Prudential Center, and the Jets and the Giants Stadium, they had no control over anymore because the Jets and Giants spent their own money along with some taxpayer money to co-own the new MetLife Stadium. So I was there for a couple of years at the NGSCA, but it wasn't really floating my boat. To make a long story short, Jerry left WOR, came to AM 970. We got together, and I was there for 5.5 great years before I decided to retire.
Well, but I'm glad
I had a lot of fun at the station. I was a sports director there, and as you know, Alex, we brought some great sports to the station. Still to this day, we carry AM 970 and MCA carrying Seton Hall basketball, Syracuse football and basketball. We had the Islanders for a couple of years. I know we're still going to carry some Islander games as part of their schedule. It was a lot of fun. We carried World Series games, playoff games. I loved that job. I loved being a sales guy there, a sales manager there. The people were great. You were great. It was a fun thing. Radio always intrigued me.
Well,
the business of sport intrigues me. I always had, like I said, since I was a young kid. And now more than ever, there's just so many opportunities for people who want to work at different levels of sport, whether it's selling sponsorships, selling media, selling internet, selling streaming, selling apparel. It's endless. And there's so many more opportunities both at the media level and at the league level and the team level. There really is. It's anybody who wants to get in the business, now's a great opportunity for people to do that.
Okay, I want to talk about the evolution of sports media as you've seen it. But you just mentioned the Islanders. And how does a guy involved with the Nets and involved in the same arena that the Devils were become an Islander fan? You're a Jersey guy. How are you an Islander fan? Tell me.
Well, for the Islanders, since day one, since their first year in 72-73, just caught my eye I'm a guy who roots for the underdog. So they were the underdog, and they were an expansion team. They won 12 games their first year. Like I said, in 72, there was no advantage to like expansion teams have now. Free agency, a greater group of players to draw from in the expansion pool, and then they became good right away through Bill Torrey drafting Dennis Potvin and Brian Trottier and Mike Bossy. They got Billy Smith, a Hall of Fame goaltender, in the expansion draft. And they built one of the greatest teams of all time in the NHL, going to 5 finals in a row, winning 4 of them. And I think 16 of the players won all 4 cups, which is different than sports is nowadays because you have so much changing of rosters year in and year out in sports. Think about that. 40 years ago, 16 of those guys on the Islanders have 4 rings. That could never happen now. And they won 19 playoff series. That could never happen now. Just can't.
Well, it's been a special run.
Yeah.
It was a special run then, and then to see the Coliseum go must have really did it get to you a little bit?
I love the Coliseum because it was such a great build. It was such a great building to watch a sporting event from. Now, it didn't have the bells and whistles like a lot of these other arenas have, but who cares? I go to watch the game. And I can never remember going to an Islander game and having a bad seat. Never. So, hopefully UBS Arena, I'm sure it's going to be spectacular, and I look forward to going to a game this year.
And as colleagues of 970, we happened to meet John Ledecky. That was a special night.
That's right. You're 100% right. John Ledecky's a good guy. He cares about the Islanders, very much so. And I think that they're this close to winning the Cup. They got to the Eastern Conference Finals. Season row got to Game 7 this past year. And, Mr. Lamoriello's done a great job there in a short period of time as their general manager. And getting Barry Trotz was his best free agent pickup. So I think that they'll have a chance again. The NHL's tough. This year the Islanders are playing their first 13 games on the road, and that's going to be tough. It's the longest road trip in history. So
it's going to be something.
Happens, but I think they'll be good.
Lou, I got to get you back on for another sports update, but really quickly, 7th grade Lou. Now today, 7th graders are on social media. They're trying to break into the business, even sports business, through social media. But what would you tell any 7th grader now that they have all the social media around them, and your viewpoint of the evolution of sports media? What would you say to all of that?
Well, again, the attraction of sports now is different, and more unfortunately, more kids are not playing sports during the day. They're on social media, but social media is big in sports. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I used to read 3-4 newspapers a day, the old fashioned hard copy of papers. Now I read them online, and you don't even need to go to read a paper because you can go to. There's so many apps. You can go to Facebook and you can read about sports. What's happening? Sports news, the day in sports. So who knows what's happening in the future? Hey, there's Saturday's Notre Dame game, which NBC has the contract for Notre Dame football forever. But they also have a streaming service, Peacock Premium. And the Notre Dame-Toledo game this weekend is not going to be on NBC. It's going to be on Peacock Premium because they want young people, sports fans, to buy their service. So it's no difference than people who want to buy Hulu or Netflix or Amazon Prime. Next year, exclusively, the NFL Thursday night game is going to be on Amazon Prime. So I am not an Amazon Prime subscriber. So if I want to watch Thursday night football next year, I got to subscribe to that. So it's not only social media; it's the apps. Like I said, it's so much different than I was growing up when I was in seventh grade. When I was in seventh grade, the entire winter team sports schedules, the Knicks and the Nets and the Islanders and the Rangers, their whole schedule wasn't even on radio. I mean, some games are on TV that weren't on radio. It's just a whole different ball game. It really is. But you could follow sports on Facebook. You could follow sports on any Instagram, and there's going to be new ones that we don't even know about yet, Alex.
Absolutely. They're always seeming to be evolving. And Can You Dig Sports Radio, by the way, is sort of a new thing that I found out about just 2 weeks ago, and we're off and running second weekend. So, Lou, I'm very honored that you've been part of this today and part of this show. It's been a long time coming, friend. And by the way, as a colleague, I really loved having you as a colleague and someone to look up to in this business. So thanks for always being there day in and day out, really.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, and you know how much I enjoyed working with you. And thanks for having me on, and hopefully we'll be doing it again.
Okay, one last thing. You said nun at the beginning. You're a Catholic high school nun, or you're seventh grade nun. Tell us how you first got to see me, because this is a weird story that I didn't even know about, but it deals with Roman Catholicism and the Cardinal of New York City.
Well, it really is an ironic story. When the great Cardinal O'Connor passed away, I was watching his funeral in my office in the Meadowlands, and as his funeral mass came to a conclusion, Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton were talking to this young man, handicapped young man, and I said, "Oh, okay, great photo op for Bill and Hillary. Great picture, a cute little kid who I guess was, I don't know, 10 years old, 10 years old.
8 at the time. It's unbelievable to think that.
Okay, 8 years old. So little did I know that when we started together, and we both started at the radio station on the same day. Remember, on that August 13th, we both started the same day. Little did I know that the little kid in the picture with Bill and Hillary Clinton after the Cardinal O'Connor funeral was Alexander Garrett. So I knew you before I knew you.
And I'm thankful to be alive to see you 20-plus years later, right? So that's just a blessing.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is for sure.
And, and it's funny, you didn't see me at any sports arena, even though I've been to all of them. You saw them on TV. That's so interesting. So,
yeah, that was interesting. I said, who's the poor kid?
Well, Lou, you got to come back. We were going to do a sports update, but this was so much more meaningful and impactful, your life in sports. Now, next time, I'm going to grill you on like week whatever of the NFL, because we're there. We are there.
Great.
So come back on soon enough. The fall is here. Football is here. Lou's here. And you're here on Can You Dig It Sports. Thank you, Lou, again for joining.
Yeah, it'll be my pleasure. Anytime you need me, I'm here.
Thank you so much. And to those listening, thanks for listening today to this conversation with Lou Terminello, the former senior VP of New Jersey Nets Sports and Entertainment. And, of course, he's still following sports as if it was like the back of his hand, and I love that about him. And we'll see you tomorrow here on the Sports Hour and Can You Dig It Sports. Have a great day. I'm Alex Garrett. Talk to you soon.